Okay, good evening. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're learning Maseches Bava Metzia Daf Gimel. I am aware that we're a blot behind. My wife just left the country for 10 days, so Sundays are very hard days in general to prepare, but they're especially hard when I know.
10 days, a great
Yeah.
man. It's great for the first day, and then start missing her.
No, I mean, I'll miss her, but I'm fine on the logistical front. I got all that down. Anyways, we will catch up over the course of the next little while. So nothing to worry about. We do need to plan a siyum. I leave that in Mark's capable hands. You let me know when we're doing and what we're doing. That's definitely not happening.
I was missed.
I wasn't asked either. You just made that up on the spot and made it like it was a thing, you know? So, we learned in our Mishnah, in the opening Mishnah, about Shnaim Ochsim Betalis. We learned about a case scenario of two people who grab onto an item, and we spoke about the first stanza of the Mishnah in regards to this seeming double claim of Ze Omer Ani Mitzasiyah, Ze Omer Ani Mitzasiyah, and then doubling over, Ze Omer Kula Shali, Ze Omer Kula Shali. We learned a couple of approaches yesterday. And then in the middle of Beis Mid Beis, we started with Lema Masnisin Delo Ke so and so. We've already seen Delo Ke Ben Nanas, who was concerned about a Shua Shav. And then we also saw about Sumchos, who held Mama Amatul B'Safek Cholkim below Shua. We gave a couple of answers for that. And now on the top of Gimel Amud Aleph, 8-9 lines down, we're going to see another sheet in the Tanoim, which may be mutually exclusive with our Mishnah. So Gimel Amud Aleph, the Gemara says, Lema Masnisin Delo Ke Rabbi Yossi. Perhaps our Mishnah can't fit with the sheet of Rabbi Yossi. Why is that the case? Dikir Rabbi Yossi, Ha'amar, he says later on in the Masechta, on Daf Lamed Zayin, there we have a machlokes to Rabbanon and Rav Yossi, and the details we'll learn later. We don't need to know them for now. But in that case over there, when there was a dispute about where certain monies belonged, so there he didn't say yachloku with a shvua like our Mishnah says. What does he say? He says munachat shiavu elio. So perhaps the Mishnah, the statement of Rabbi Yossi that can be found in this Masechta and Daf Lamed Zayin is mutually exclusive to our Mishnah, because our Mishnah says that we have a Shvuah and Yachloku, and over there it says Munachat Shiavu Elio. That seems like a stira. So it says the Gemara Elamai, you're only asking a kasha against Rabbi Yossi. The sheet of the Rabbanon on Lamed Zayin isn't much better. Rabbanon, what do they hold? Kevan de Amri Rabbanon HaShe'ar Yehe Munachat Shiavu Elio Hanami Kish'ar Dami Desvekahi. Says the Gemara, the difference between Rabbi Yossi and the Rabbanon on Daf Lamed Zayin is a hair's breadth. Rabbi Yossi holds that everything is Munachat Shiavu Elio, and the Rabbanon hold that only that which is Besafek is held until Shiavu Elio. But both of them hold that not all of the money is split. So if you're Kasha, you're going to ask me from Lamed Zayin, don't just ask me from the Shita of Rabbi Yossi. You need to ask me from the Shita of the Rabbanon also. So the Gemara says about 12 lines down, Haimai, what exactly are you talking about? Namely, within the machlokas between the Rabbanon and Rabbi Yossi, you've made an error. And here's the right way to ask this question. You want to tell me like the sheet of the Rabbanon, that the Rabbanon held that which we knew belonged to person A and that which we knew belonged to person B was given out. And only the money that was besafek was in this category of munachat shiavu elio. Hasam devade haimana dechad minayu. Therefore, over there in that case on Lamed Zayin, Amri Rabbanon yehe munachat shiavu elio. It was clear we had some basic parameters. We knew, let's say there's $150 in question. So we knew $50 belonged to Reuven, $50 belonged to Shimon. We were mesupak about the last 50. Fine. In that case, that's when the Rabbanon would say that the extra, the shi'ar, would be munachat shiavu elio. I understand. But Hacha, says the Gemara, a quarter of the way down, Hacha, in our case, in our Mishnah on Daf Beis, the Ikol Memar de Tarvaihu, that perhaps we could say that they really are both owners, namely, perhaps they both picked up the item at the same exact time, and they both are partial owners. That's not the same case as the case from Bava Metzia Lamed Zayin. Therefore, Amri Rabbanan Palge B'Shvua. Perhaps the rabbis would, in fact, be able to fit within our Mishnah. However, and an important however, perhaps Rabbi Yossi would never fit with our Mishnah. Eliyam's Rabbi Yossi here, if we want to say that really our Mishnah does fit with Rabbi Yossi, Hashto mahasam over there in the case on Lamed Zayin, debevada ikamana lamar v'ikamana lamar. $50, or the example here is $100 belongs to Reuven and $100 belongs to Shimon. And there, Amar Rabbi Yossi, even there, when we knew that some of the monies belonged to Reuven and some of the monies belonged to Shimon, there's still Amar Rabbi Yossi, Emunachat Shevalio, Hacha deikla memar dechad minayu lo kol shekain pashud. He would say in our case, all the more so he would say that it should be Munachat Sheyavu Elio. And therefore, we're really stuck. Namely, I could understand a way in which the Rabbanan from Lamed Zayin could stem with our Mishnah. But there's no way, seemingly, says the Gemara, that Rabbi Yossi from Daf Lamed Zayin would fit in our Mishnah. We're a third of the way down, maybe a little bit more on Gimel Lamed Aleph, and the Gemara now says, don't worry. I know there was a unique sheet of Rabbi Yossi on Lamed Zayin that it's Munachat Sheyavu Elio. But don't worry, I could make it all work. Kaftor v'ferach afilu tema Rabbi Yossi. Awesome over there in regards to the Gemara on Lamed Zayin, we have an assumption. Vada ika ramai. For sure, one person is lying. Hacha miyemar dika ramai. Perhaps the only time we say Munachat Sheyavu Eliyahu is when we're dealing with Ramai. But when we're not necessarily dealing with Ramai, when it's possible that both people are telling the truth, so then maybe perhaps he would not say Munachat Sheyavu Eliyahu. Ema, perhaps what we could say in our case to explain Rabbi Yossi is that really they both are fair and equal owners. However, in the case on Lamed Zayin, someone's definitely lying. Therefore, the way we can understand Rabbi Yossi, who holds that it's Munachat Sheyavu Eliyahu, is like this. When we know that someone is lying, we're always going to say Munachat Sheyavu Eliyahu. But when there's a case where the truth can actually play out, where really perhaps both people are equal owners, and there isn't a liar or a spinster or a criminal here, no one's trying to sneak anything. It could be that everybody's telling the truth. In such a case, we would not say Munachat Sheyavu Eliyahu, and our Mishnah would fit perfectly with Rabbi Yossi. So says the Gemara in answer number 1 for Rabbi Yossi. And answer number 2, halfway down, Inami Hasam Kanisle Rabbi Yossi L'Ramai. Perhaps we can say that in Bava Metzia Lamed Zayin that Rabbi Yossi is giving a knas to the thief. He's giving him a knas that he won't get any money, so that he'll actually be Moda al Ha'emes. But Hacha over here in our case might say that Islay Delodi. What loss is there if he were to admit it wasn't his to start with? It was a Metzia. It was a lost item. So therefore, the Gemara says that's answer number 2, that perhaps the whole idea on Daf Lamed Zayin, according to Rabbi Yossi, about Munachat Sheyavu Eliyahu is a knas. So that's answer number 2. Says the Gemara Tenach b'Metzia. I could understand this distinction of answer number 2 of knas when we talk about a Metzia, when we talk about a lost item. But Mekach u'Memkar ma'ika l'meimar. But it wouldn't be the same with Mekach u'Memkar, because there people would taka lose money. Therefore, Ela Machvarta, we need to go back to the first of our 2 answers, Kiddushanin me'ikar, like we first answered, namely, that in regards to the case of Bava Metzia Daf Lamed Zayin, someone's definitely lying. And in regards to Bava Metzia Daf Beis, maybe not. And therefore, this is the final answer about Rabbi Yossi. We started today asking whether or not Rabbi Yossi could fit. The Gemara's conclusion is that Rabbi Yossi could fit. And here's how he would distinguish. On Bava Metzia Daf Lamed Zayin, that someone was definitely lying. In such a case, we would say, Munachat Sheyavu Eliyahu. Masha'ein Kain on Bava Metzia Daf Beis, there we would say that Lav Dafka, that somebody's lying. And when it is that nobody's lying, we would say, like the din of our Mishnah, even according to Rabbi Yossi, who would otherwise normally say Munachat Sheyavu Eliyahu, but in our Mishnah on Daf Beis, because it's possible that no one is lying, so therefore he would hold that there's a shvua and yachloku. Very clean. Then the Gemara says 2/3 of the way down, wait 1 second. Bein l'Rabbanan bein l'Rabbi Yossi. Whether or not you hold like the Rabbanan that part of the money is Munach Sheyavu Eliyahu, or if you hold like Rabbi Yossi that all of the money is Munach Sheyavu Eliyahu, either way, Hasam, in another case that we have in Maseches Shavuos, Chenveni al Pinkaso, we have a case, Gabe Chenveni al Pinkaso. This is a case like this. Let's say that I am an employer and you are an employee. But what I do is I tell my friend who owns a store, he's the guy who owns the, those change places in Israel. I say, listen, you're flush with cash. I owe him $800. Front $800. I'll pay you back later. Okay. So let's say Rabbi Yaakov is my employee and I'm the employer, and Michael is the chenveni. Michael is the cash changer. So I say to Michael, I owe him $800. Michael says, no problem. He takes out $100, runs it through that fancy machine. Definitely $800. Here you go. He takes the money. But then there's a problem. Down the road, Rabbi Yaakov says, I never got the money. So what happens in such a case? The halacha is that if the worker says, I never got the money, I was relying on Michael to give him the money. Michael assumed that Yaakov knew that the chenveni could give him the money. No problem. But let's say Rabbi Yaakov says, look at my checking account. I never got the money. I never got the cash, CCTV. So then the Gemara says, Zen ishba v'notel v'zen ishba v'notel. Everybody makes a shvua in this case. Says the Gemara, I don't understand. Someone's definitely lying, because I know that Michael let go of the money, and I know that Yaakov is claiming he never got it. Why is it Bein l'Rabbanan, Bein l'Rabbi Yossi? They both speak about Munachat Shevel, but in the case of Chenveni al Pinkaso, in that case, it's Dvarim Pshutim that there's a liar. So the previous distinction that we wanted to make to answer up for Rabbi Yossi is that the way that Rabbi Yossi understands our Mishnah is that our Mishnah is talking about where there's no Ramai. Therefore, we say that there's a Shvua and Yachloku. But where there is a Ramai, we say Munach. So the Gemara says, oh, well, if you're going to say Munach in a case where there's a Ramai, this case of Chen B'ni Alpin Kaso, that should be the case. So says the Gemara, yet another gentle distinction. Amre hasam hainu taima de amar le chenveni lebalabais is different. Chenveni, Michael, the storekeeper, the guy who was holding the cash, he could say to me, wait 1 second. Michael says, Phil, I was just doing what you asked me to do. You wanted me to pay Yaakov. I took $800 and I paid Yaakov. My isli gabe sachir. I have no relationship. Michael says, I have nothing to do with your employee. I gave him the money, but I have nothing to do with him in an official way. And afal gav de kamishtaba li lo mehem and li b'shvuot. Him promising. Big deal that he promised. My ASIC wasn't with him. My ASIC was with you. At he'emante de lo amris li b'sade havle. You trusted Yaakov that he was going to admit to the truth, but you never told me, says Michael, that when I give over the money to Yaakov, that I should do so with Adim. The Sachir Nami, the person who's hiring as well, Amar Leila Balabais, let's say not the person who's hired. So Yaakov could say to me as well, Amar Leila Balabais, Ana Avde Avid Tagabach. Yaakov will say to me, Phil, I worked for you. My Isli Gabe Chenveni. You shouldn't have paid me through that guy. That's not how this works. You owe me money. You want to pay me, then you can, but don't get me mixed up in all of this. I don't want to be a part of this. And even if Michael swears to Yaakov, I promise I gave the money. So what? So what? So because of the fact that Michael really only had an ASEC with me and not with Yaakov, and because Yaakov really only had an ASEC with me and not with Michael, therefore we don't say Munachat Shevel. It's not fair. And therefore, Hilkach Tarvai Mishtaboy V'Shakle Mi Balabais. And therefore, both people can make a claim against me, the Balabais. Michael can say, I shelled out $800 and I never collected it. I owe him. And then Rabbi Yaakov can make a shvua that I never paid him, and therefore I now owe him, and I'm out more money. So the Gemara tried to ask. We gave the answer of Rabbi Yossi, that Rabbi Yossi only says munach in a case when there's a ramoy. If there's a case of ramoy and there's always going to be munach, why wasn't it munach in the case of chen b'nei alpin kaso? There it's different because we created a triangle relationship between myself, the employer, Michael, the chenveni, the store owner who's flush with cash, and Yaakov, my employee, who is in need of getting paid. That triangle was an unfair triangle because Yaakov didn't know that he'd be paid by a chenveni, and Yaakov really wanted to deal directly with me. Therefore, normally we would have said munach, but in this case, we say that a shvur should be made. All right, we're at the 2 dots, 12 lines from the bottom. Tani Reb Chia, man li biyarcha. I say to you, you owe me $100. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol nihya b'dvaro. Michael, you owe me $100. V'halomer ein licha biyadi klum. Michael says, not correct. I don't owe you a dime. And the Eidim Taka say Michael does owe Phil $50. So then no sen lo chamishim zuz v'yishava al hashar. Remember what I had claimed. I claimed that you owed me 100. Eidim only said that Michael owed me 50. What about the balance of the 50 v'yishava al hashar? On that, Michael can say, I hereby make a shvua that the shiur, the extra 50 that I didn't agree to and that the Eidim didn't testify about, that I don't owe you that money. Why? And this is a line that's going to take up some of our brain power this evening. Says the Gemara, Shelo tehei hodas piv gedola meha'adas edim mikal v'chomer. A jam-packed line, one that could be the source of multiple days of shiurim in basic pshat in the Gemara, certainly in the ensuing Gemara, which is somewhat complicated, and in the Rishonim. Let's just learn it in the most basic sense. Why is it that the shvuah works? Because we don't want the hodas piv to be greater than edim from a kal v'chomer. Let's see what this means. We're going to unpack this over the course of the next many lines, or really over the next amud, and we'll be taking this particular line and analyzing it until the end of the day today. So we have to figure out what this line means of shelo tehei hodas piv gedola mehadas edim mikal v'chomer. And v'tanatuna, we have a similar idea that's found in our Mishnah. What does our Mishnah say? We know our Mishnah from Daf Beis. Our Mishnah on Daf Beis says, Shnai mochsim betalis. Ze omer ani mitzasiyah v'chulei. What was the case in our Mishnah? V'hahacha kevan detafis, because the people grabbed onto the talis. On Sade, we make a testimony. We have a halachic assumption. Demai detafis hai didehu. Umay detafis hai didehu. That whatever you grab onto is yours. Vikatani, and nevertheless, our Mishnah says yishava. So therefore, that's a raya, like we just saw, that in this case too, that if I claim Michael owes me a mana, and he denies everything. So I claim, Michael, you owe me 100. Michael says 0. The Eidim come along and say, you're both wrong. Michael only owes you 50. So Michael has to pay the 50 that the Eidim said he owes me. But on the balance of the last 50, the din is that he can just make a shvua similar to our Mishnah. Now, let's analyze this line of my shelo tehei hodas piv gedola mehadas edim mikal v'chomer. What does it mean that we don't want the hodas piv to be greater than the ha'adas edim from a kal v'chomer? Says the Gemara, shelo tomar hodas piv. We should not say that when a person admits something, namely that modeh b'mixas, that shelo tomar hodas piv hu deramya rachmana shvu alei, that it's not only in a case of modeh b'mixas that we require a shvua. Where do we see this idea that you require a shvua with modeh b'mixas? So this idea is found throughout Shas. We've already seen it a couple of times. It seems that we've seen it 3 times so far. In Ksubis Yud Ches, in Gittin Nun Aleph, and Bava Kama Kub Zayin. I expect all of you to know this down to the Mari Makom, what line on the page it is, everyone. Kidder Rabba. The Omar Rabba, 3 lines from the bottom. Mipnei ma omra Torah moda b'mixas atayno yishava. Why is it that when a person admits to part of what was claimed against him, does he have to make a shvuah? Because chazaka ein adam meis panav bifnei bal chovo. That if I borrowed money from you and you're standing in front of me in Bezdin, I just won't have the audacity to claim in front of Bezdin that you lent me nothing. It wouldn't happen. So what happens? Really, v'hai bekule boy denachbere. Really, what I wanted to do, because I'm a jerk, was to say I owe you nothing. The reason why I didn't shut down the claim and say no, I don't know Michael anything in Bezdin is because mishum de'ein adam meiz panav. That's understandable. I can't. It's so. I mean, in today's culture, I discussed this the last time we had this Gemara. In today's culture, mamish, anything goes. There was a line that I heard about this current war. I know you're lying, and you know that I know that you're lying. But when you lie, everyone other than me and you thinks you're telling the truth. Yesh pazed davar ma. Let's not get into politics, but there's a deep truth there. It's an unbelievable thing. Okay, so part 1 is that really I'm a jerk, and I really just want to deny that I ever borrowed money from you, but I'm modeh b'mixas atayna because And on the top of Gimel Amud Beis, and really, because I was going to partially admit, I might as well admit the whole darn thing, because I really did borrow the 100 from you, not just 50. I was only modeh b'mixas. Why was I only modeh b'mixas? The reason why I didn't want to admit to 100 was because ishtimutehu dekam ishtamet mine. I was trying to slip away from you. I didn't want to have to pay the whole thing. I'm cash poor. I don't have enough money in the bank. And therefore, Savar, give me a couple days. Okay, so I'll tell a half truth. And because of the fact that I wasn't willing to say 0 because I have a basic decency, but I wasn't willing to say 100 because I'm poor. So therefore, when it comes to Moda Mixa Sataina, Yishava, the reason why I have to make a Shavua is because the fact that you are only Moda B'mixas, there's a shtickle remez that you probably do owe more. And in order to ensure that you are telling the truth, the Chachamim instituted that by Moda B'mixas Sataina Yishava, so that a person who is making a Shavua, won't end up lying. The Shvua will force them to tell the truth. So that's what's going on by Moda B'mixas Sataina. Aval Hadas Edim Deleika Lememar Hachi. When it comes to Hadas Edim, remember my case with Michael. I said to Michael, "You owe me 100." Michael said, "I owe you 0." He wasn't Moda B'mixas Sataina. He wasn't Moda B'mixas anything. He said 0. The Edim came along and said 50. The Leika Lememar Hachi. So then Ema Lo. Then I would have said, "Oh, okay, so maybe by Edim there should be no Shvua. Maybe by the extra 50 that Michael denied, he agreed to the first 50. He didn't agree, but the Edim forced the first 50. By the second 50, we said he should make a Shvua. Maybe there is no Shvua. Maybe the Shvua is only reserved for Modeh B'mixas Sataina because of the Svara of Rabbah. Kamash Malan Kal V'chomer. And because of the fact that there's a Kal V'chomer, not necessarily a natural logic, but because there's a Kal V'chomer, we extend the Shvua that's made in the case of Modeh B'mixas Sataina over to a case of Ha'adas Edim. And says the Gemara, Umay Kal V'chomer. What is the Kal V'chomer that teaches me that just like by a case of Modeh B'mixas Sataina Yishava, so too by a case of Ha'adas Edim Yishava? Says the Gemara 6 lines down on Gimel Amud Beis. That a person's mouth, which can't obligate you in paying money, can obligate you in paying a shvua, then edim shemechayven osam mamon, then edim, as like we just saw, that I can force with edim. Michael was forced to make a shvua on the second $50. Edim shemechayven osam mamon, eino den shemechayven oso shvua. So that's our kal v'chomer as to how we extend from the world of from Modeh B'mixas Sataina Yishava to the world of Edim, that they too should be Yishava. Says the Gemara, what in the world are you talking about? Upiv ein mechayvo mamon? I mean, we've seen 100 cases, probably more than 100 cases in the Bavas alone, just in Bava Kama, where you open your mouth in the wrong way and all of a sudden you have a significant financial obligation. What did we say about a person's edus? Hodas baldin kemea edim dami. Come on. Pashut that if you're going to open your mouth the wrong way, you're going to be chayiv. Edus alone can be mechayiv a person money. What did you mean in this first version of the Kal V'chomer that ma piv ein mechayiv o mamon, that your mouth can't be mechayiv you mamon? That's just absolutely not true. So says the Gemara, a little spin. My mamon, when we say in the Kal V'chomer that mamon is something that I can't bring upon myself by being modeh b'mixas, what is that talking about? Knas. That's only talking about slaps on the wrist, shloshim shekel for this, and chamishim shekel for that. That you cannot bring upon yourself by modeh b'mixas. That you cannot. So says the Gemara, all right, I gotcha. And therefore the Kal V'chomer would make sense. Just like with your mouth, you cannot bring upon yourself knasim, your chayiv and a shvua. Then edim, where you can be brought upon the obligation for a knas, all the more so you should be obligated in a shvua. Very good. Says the Gemara, here's the new Kal V'chomer. Uma piv she'ein mechayvo knas mechayvo shvua. Just like verbally, I cannot bring upon myself a knas, but I can create a scenario of bringing about a shavua. So this is version 2 of the Kal V'chomer that teaches us that we make a bridge from the world of Modeh b'mixas atayno yishava to the world of Ha'adas Edim, that there too we should be yishava based on a Kal V'chomer. Says the Gemara, the Kal V'chomer from the world of Modeh b'mixas atayna / Knas to the world of Edim is not a good Kal V'chomer. And we're going to poke a hole in this 1/3 of the way down on Gimel Amud Beis. Ma lefiv shekain mechayvo korban, tomar be'edim she'ein mechayvo oso korban. Says the Gemara, you can't make a kal v'chomer from the world of piv, of a verbal admittance, to the world of edim, because there's something very unique about piv of a verbal admittance. What's that? That I can, with my words, make you obligated in a korban. That's not true by edim. Says the Gemara, I hear you, but you're wrong for a totally different reason. Halfway down, halo kasha, Reb Chia, ki Reb Meir sfira le, to amar edim mechayben, so korban mikal v'chomer. So says the Gemara that we can still actually use this second kal v'chomer, because at the end of the day, perhaps it's the case that really Piv and Edim are the same, that both of them are Mechayev Korban. We asked the Kasha. We said our Kal V'chomer is not good. Piv can be Mechayev you a Korban. Edim cannot. The Gemara says bad question, because Edim can also be Mechayev you Korban, because Reb Chia holds like Reb Meir. Where do we see this idea that Edim can bring about a Korban? It's not. The Mishnah writes as follows. This Mishnah can be found in Maseches Yevamos and in Maseches Krisus. Amru lo shnayim. 2 people gave testimony. Achlas chelev. I say you ate chelev, which is usher for you to eat. Chelev of a behema that you're not allowed to eat. V'hu omer, you say back to me, lo achalti. It's just not true. So says the Gemara, Reb Meir mechayev v'chachamim potrim. That Reb Meir is of the opinion that I can be mechayev you in making a shvua about this food, about eating the chelev. What does that show you? That Reb Meir holds you can be mechayev shvua with edim. Very good. And v'chachamim potrim. So what we see over here is that Reb Meir is the one who holds that there's still a chiyuv. If Reb Meir is what? You're correct. Reb Meir svir l'damer edim mechayev and also korban. Yes, that's correct. I confused the case. What does Rashi say over here? Oh yeah, so yeah, so that if a person were to eat chelev and I claim you ate it, you said no, you didn't. So if there are edim, so then you're obligated to bring a korban. So what's Rav Meir's svara that you're chayiv to bring a korban? Amar Rav Meir im haviyuhu shnaim lidei misa chamura. If 2 people can bring about a death penalty by giving edus about you, again in all the right settings, lo yiviuhu lidei korban hakal. Can they not bring you to bring a korban? So this is where we see the shita of Rav Meir, that with edus alone, you could bring about a chiyuv of a korban. And with this shita, we can reinvigorate our kal v'chomer about piv to the world of Edim. Amrulo, the Chachamim in this Mishnah, said back to Rav Meir, I disagree. Ma'im yirtze lomar mezid hayise yipater. You can't say the Chachamim to Rav Meir, because the person can always claim I was amazed, and when you're amazed, you don't bring a korban chatas. Chatas is only brought b'shogeg, so therefore you pater. So says the Gemara, very good. That's a machlokas between Rav Meir and the Rabbanon. Again, if our Gemara follows Rav Meir, if Rav Chia follows Rav Meir, then our version number 2 of our Kal V'chomer stands, and therefore there would be a shvua even with Ha'adas Edim, according to Rav Meir. Says the Gemara, Elamala piv sheken mechayvo asham. But still there's another problem with our Kal V'chomer, which is that with your mouth, with words, you can bring about a korban asham. Says the Gemara, that's ridiculous. Asham hainu korban. That's not even a good argument. An asham is a korban. That's what we were discussing before. Same exact line of reasoning. Rishonim will have to figure out what the havamina was of this odd question in the Gemara. Says the Gemara, Ella Malafiv shekain mechayvo chomesh. Oh, this is a good kasha. We tried to make a kal v'chomer from piv to edim, from modib and mixas taina to the world of edim. And here the Gemara says there's a problem, because when it comes to piv, I can verbally bring about a scenario where you're obligated to pay a chomesh, but that's not true by edim. Says the Gemara, 8-9 lines from the bottom, halo kasha. This is really not the case. Rav Chia ki Rav Meir Svirale. Rav Chia, again, in another area of halacha, holds like Rav Meir. Ki hechi de mechayev le korban mikal v'chomer, mechayev le chomesh mikal v'chomer. Says the Gemara, don't worry, just like Rav Meir holds that you can be mechayev a korban based on a kal v'chomer, he also holds that edim can be mechayev a chomesh from kal v'chomer. So says the Gemara, Elamalafiv, we have another uniqueness that might undermine our kal v'chomer. Elamalafiv shekain eino behakrasha uv hazama, that by a verbal alone, we cannot bring about hakrasha or hazama, contradictory edus and edim zomimin. Tomar be'edim sheyeshnan behakrasha uv hazama. However, with edim, we can bring about a case of hakrasha ve'azama. Famously, we know that the classical case of establishing an edim, a set of edim as zomimin is imanu ha'yisem, that's an edus, but you can't do that befiv. So therefore, perhaps the kal v'chomer we said earlier that teaches us that just like by modib and mixas atayna yishava there's a shvua, so too edim can be mechayev a shvua. So says the Gemara, maybe that's subject to question. The Gemara responds 5 lines from the bottom on Gimel Amud Beis. Don't worry. Ela asya mi eid echad. We're going to rewire the kal v'chomer. We thought the kal v'chomer was about a knas and about piv. Says the Gemara, we're really talking about eid echad. What's the kal v'chomer? Uma eid echad she'ein mechayvo mamon mechayvo shvua. An eid echad cannot extract money based on his eidus from the plaintiff, from the defendant. Edim shemechayven oso mamon, eino din shemechayven oso shvua. All the more so, it should be true that we would have a shvua. So this is the kal v'chomer. I'm going to say it one more time. We're actually going to pause right here, and then tomorrow we'll ask some kashas on this. There really is no great spot to stop right here. So let's just review the kal v'chomer as it stands. The Gemara changed its havamina. The Gemara thought that we were initially talking about piv, and we're actually talking about a din of eid echad. And the kal v'chomer is like this: just like an eid echad is not able to bring money out of someone, an eid echad cannot demand from a defendant that he pays, yet he can be mechayev that person to make a shvua. Then eidim who can bring about money, a financial payment from the defendant, that's a good kal v'chomer. And that would then teach us that just like by the case of eid echad, we would have a case of a shvua, so too by the case of by full edim, by shtei edim, we would definitely have a case of shvua. So we're going to stop right here, 2 lines before the bottom of the page. We'll pick up Amir Tashem tomorrow night to learn Daf Daled. Wishing you all a beautiful night.